Hey guys, and welcome to the video. Today we're playing Fable 2 and I'm going to be giving you my definitive Fable 2025 wishlist. This one's going to be pretty long, so why don't you get relaxed. Today I'm aiming to cover pretty much all the major things I want to see in the latest Fable game. I'll probably end up forgetting a few because that's just kind of how it goes, but I'm aiming to cover all the main things I really want in the new Fable game. I'm going to be talking pretty in depth about every single one, so as I say, it will be a pretty long video today. Anyways though, let's not waste any time and get straight into it. Also, you may have to excuse some of the cuts today. I'm playing Fable 2 and I'm emulating it, and it's not the most stable thing in the world to say the least. Okay, sorry, first off. For me, a big one is fun and fluid combat. Now, I know I've mentioned this in one of my videos before, but to me, it's just really important that the combat is nice and fun, fluid, and each attack can kinda connect. In my opinion, I think Fable 2 did this the best, although I know some people think Fable 3 did it the best. But what I really like is that I can string together attacks, pull out a pistol, use some will, and kind of like divert my attacks in different directions in a way that's really fluid. I can effectively rotate around my enemies while striking attacks of all different methods and having no issues. And then also having mechanics like the roll and the block and the dodge. It allowed me to have pretty tactical gameplay in a way that was really fun to string together combos. I felt like every button press I made was a button press that was important, and it was just unbelievably fun. It felt like you could truly get good at Fable. This is something I want to see come back and expanded upon. I like the freeing nature of combat. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. I think if we start to overcomplicate something that works when it's best at its simple form, then we're just going to make our lives so much harder. But there are things I do think need some genuine improvements, as I say. The aiming is a big one for me. I haven't actually unlocked it at this point in time, otherwise I'd show you, which is low-key a bit of an L. But when you hold down Y, you aim in, and unfortunately in pretty much every single Fable game, no matter how the aiming worked, whether it was clicking your stick in, clicking the left trigger, or just holding down the Y button, it never felt precise or good enough that you could get good at it. I mean, you could get better at it, but it never felt like you're actually playing at your peak ability, because the gameplay's mechanics just didn't allow you to do that, unfortunately. This is something I think in 2025 we should very much be able to get around. Honestly, I think it's as simple as if I click left trigger, aim in, and let me control the reticle with a right stick. Don't add any aim acceleration, just make it raw input nice and simple so I feel like I can control where the reticle is actually going. And I think that would work perfect. I would like different hitboxes for certain areas of the body. I wouldn't want a leg shot to do as much damage as a headshot. And whilst I like the freeing nature and the simplicity of just tapping Y over and over again, I do want there to be ways that I can get better at it and improve. And unfortunately, I feel like with the old combat system that we have in this game, you can do it, but it's not as easy as you'd like. And I feel like you do kind of get blocked at a certain point with your improvements due to just how it's formatted. I also want to see like a big, wide array of weapons. I think there is no excuse to not have the most weapons we've ever had in a Fable game here. I want tons of unique ones when going into dungeons. All these things add into the combat and keeping it fresh and replayable. And if we really don't flesh out these elements, it's pointless. So yeah, it needs to be fun. It needs to be satisfying. It needs to be rewarding. There needs to be genuine weapon progression. I liked what Fable 3 did, where you kind of had your own set achievements for each weapon, and you could slowly master them. That's not a bad idea, and I do think we should get things like that. Bring back stuff like the augments, where I can have certain abilities on my weapons. In other words, bring back what we have and make it much, much better. Keep the fluidity, but also add some more tactical gameplay to it, and make me feel like I can get better at the game. Next up is going to be a little subjective, but I'm going to try and explain what I mean here. I want the classic British goofy humour to come back. Now, this really isn't the easiest thing to explain because you could argue they've been doing this in the trailers. And I would agree. I'd say it's pretty good so far in the trailers. I know a lot of people think it's kind of cringe and stuff. I haven't been hit with too many cringe moments personally. But I think there's some just classic goofy things that need to come back. I love the shenanigans you can just kind of get up to. That witty humor that you wouldn't see in most other games. I think it's notoriously an English thing. I think that's why Lionhead was so good at it. Now, luckily, Playground Games are an English studio, which puts them very much at an advantage here. I don't think English humor is the easiest thing to grasp. It's very sharp. It's very off the top of the dome. It's not very thought out. I don't think English humor is necessarily about these big setups to these big, cool jokes. I think it's really on the fly, in the moment, funny little gag. And I think that that's what Fable really excels at, and I want stuff like that to return, personally. Obviously, more thought out jokes is great. Definitely have those. It's not one or the other, and I'm definitely welcome to them exploring different styles of humor, but I want Fable to feel like Fable and retain that same humor and comedy it always had. One thing that is on my mind with this game, and I think we've seen a few elements of it so far, which bodes pretty well, is I want some great locations. You've got to understand that Fable excelled in this department. From Oakvale to Oakfield to Bowerstone to Aurora, the games had these amazing set locations, and they were always pretty, always cool, and always fun. And the variety we had too was nothing to be scoffed at. It did genuinely feel like who the is this guy? Who the hell is Herman? This guy's not normally in this cave, by the way. I'm a little confused. Right. Where even was I? I'm like so lost now. Yeah, so they had like a really good variety of locations. You had these really built-up areas, then you had these lovely farm areas, and then obviously you had these really spooky areas like Rookridge and Westcliff, and they all added up to having some really creepy elements, some really cool elements. I really hope stuff like dark themes return in full force. Fable used to scare me. That is good. I want to be scared when playing Fable. Obviously, it's not a horror game, there is a difference. Maybe creeped out is a more appropriate word. When I was going through Wraithmarsh for the first time, I was terrified. I was also like 9, but still, it was scary, okay? I was just sitting there, and I was like, oh my god, this is literally, to me, that was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you know what, I won't lie, even now, as a 20-year-old man, it still kind of spooks me out. I don't spend much time in Wraithmarsh. I won't lie, I'll admit it. It's a little scary, okay? It's a little spooky. I don't like it. Makes me feel uneasy. But that's good. That's how it should make you feel. It's what makes those locations so memorable. I would not remember that location if it was just a boring swamp. But no, it's the eerie music. It's the soundtrack that kicks in. It's when you're sitting there and you feel isolated and alone in that area. And you're going, oh my god, what's going to attack me? And then you get an enemy that's so perfectly linked to the location that it scares the hell out of you. That is something that Fable excels at. Even in the weakest game, which is Fable 3, when you go to that first cave in Aurora and the crawler is attacking you, and that is scary, that is good. And I love the art direction they took those locations. And it's not hard to replicate. Just link the enemies to the location, add the soundtrack to add onto it, and it's all about layering these different elements. If you have a spooky location with terrifying enemies and a really creepy soundtrack, and then you also add that element of fear in with the gameplay, perhaps you're on your own, perhaps light is limited like in Aurora, or obviously in Wraithmarsh, I should say you're alone. It all adds into this thing where, like, that moment is so memorable because of how much it scares you on the first run through. And that really does just come down to the memorable locations and the awesome locations you could explore. Another one that I kind of just touched on them really, which I'll kind of get through this one quick because I did speak about it, is soundtrack. The soundtrack has to be good. Russell Shaw, who was the originator behind the Fable soundtracks, killed it every single time. Even with Fable Legends, which was a game that didn't seem to have much hope or promise, I think he did an exceptional job at. They always had this sort of really bouncy, charismatic feel in the city areas. Had a really peaceful and calming feel in the calmer areas, of course. And then, obviously, when you get to the spooky areas, it was genuinely eerie and scary. And as I say, I think this does kind of link back to what I was mentioning not too long ago about linking the locations to the sound design. They are important, and I'm sure they know this, of course. I'm not explaining game dev to them here. I'm just talking about why it's on my wish list. I think that they did that really well with the earlier Fable games, and if they can just start linking some really good soundtracks to the gameplay, I think that's going to be great. I personally really hope they go back to Russell Shaw. I know he's still doing freelance music, so I'd be personally very down for them if they were to do that. But I think they really did just make up a key part of what Fable is. Oh my god, it's a hob. But speaking about this, the next one is something I covered in a video specific to it, and I'm not going to talk about it too much here for that reason, but I'll leave it linked down below. And that is the morality system. Now, as I say, I've covered it for pretty much 15 minutes in another video. But to keep it very simple, morality was a key part of the older games. They basically were part of its identity. It kept Fable Fable. It was why I personally played, having the options between good and bad, and giving the player lots of choices. And to me, that needs to return. Again, I'll link my video fully down below if you want to know more about that. And I will touch upon more things that kind of link to morality in this video. But yeah, if you want a full in-depth video on morality, it's in the description. I want to kick chickens. That's all. Let me kick chickens. I know they showed someone kicking chickens in a CGI in-engine footage, whatever, but I want to kick chickens. I'm really hoping for some important decision-making to return. I'm going to give some credit to Fable 2 and 3 here in this department, because I think they both had elements of decision making that I thought was really good. Now, in Fable 3, you could argue they were slightly more shallow than you'd like, but I do think it still excelled in this department. You had the choice, basically, between how you wanted the entire map to look and play out. You had the choice between about how happy things were, how the economy is in the game. You basically had the choice of shaping the game how you want. And it all ties into obviously being your own hero and shaping your own journey. So I don't want the new Fable to be afraid to let the player have this much power. If the player ruins their game by terrible decisions, that is the player's decisions. And I want that to take place. Like, I think if you pick all the bad options for Fable 3, you ruin the map. It's not even worth playing at that point. Just my take. But that's okay, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be the evil character that ruins the map. That is exactly what you want in an evil playthrough. And it was all down to the important decision making you make. The next one is something I haven't spoken about because I don't really know fully where we stand at this moment in time. I want them to give us lots of lore. Now, I don't understand how the reboot is going to be formatting itself here. I don't know how much of the old lore is retconned, or whether this world will actually share a lot of similarities with the old game. But either way, if this is the brand new foundation and it's all retconned and everything's going to be brand new to the player, I want them to have so much lore it's unreal, because it gives them so many other options to explore in the later games. If they end up actually making a Fable 2, I want them to feel like they've set up so much for themselves that they can take it in really interesting directions. And on top of that, it gives us as the players things to speculate about. It stops it from being a surface level RPG to a certain degree and lets it become really unique. So I want to know about the events that transpired before the game. I want to know about the events that transpire after the game. Maybe. More so like teasers and stuff. I want to know about some really big moments that happened in the game's lore. Write it in books, tell it us in dialogue. I want the game to be broadcasting information that we as the player are able to learn, study, and basically take all on board to formulate our own opinions on things that are going to happen. Speculate on what could possibly happen with certain elements of the game. That is what I find fun about RPGs, and it's what, in my opinion, kept Fable going for so long, and why I enjoy games so much like Skyrim, that have all that lore. I also really want to see the return of old skill systems. The Road to Rule, which was in Fable 3, it didn't work. One issue I have with it, right, is the level system was so simplified that it hurts, and I'm scared that the new Fable will do the same. I'm going to try and simplify what I mean here, because it is quite hard to understand if you haven't played Fable in recent time, but I'm going to try and convert this to currency. Picture it as currency. In Fable 2, when you attack someone with a sword, you get a form of currency. When you attack someone with will, you get a form of currency, a different one. And when you attack someone with guns, you get a different form of currency. So you have three main forms of currency. And that currency can be used in the skill menu to upgrade various abilities. But you can't cross over that currency. You have to use the sword if you want to improve your strength. You have to use the gun if you want to improve your skill. You have to use your magic if you want to improve your will. That was why it worked so well. In Fable 3, it wasn't like that. You earned guild seals through just killing things, whether you use magic the entire playthrough, guns the entire playthrough, or swords the entire playthrough. You could never use your sword once and still max out your strength, and I hate that. I think it's just pointless to do that. So I really want to see the return of the old systems in that regard, because I think that sort of stuff is really important. It not only makes our character feel so much more our own, but also it can tie so many cool things to this. Another thing we lost in Fable 3 because of that system was the fact that as you progress your character, your physical traits change. If you max out strength, your character is more muscly. If you max out magic, your character has these sort of like magic marks over his face. And I thought that was really cool because once again, it did just add a bit of reality to improving your character's abilities, and it also grounded itself in the lore. In Fable 3, you look practically the same, and it's something I wasn't a big fan of, so I would definitely like to see a return to the old skill systems we saw in Fable 1 and 2. I would argue maybe even Fable 1 is the best in this department, but I think Fable 2 did a great job also, so I'm happy with either one if it can be just as good. Speaking of elements where Fable 2 and 3 perhaps isn't as good as Fable 1, I am desperate to know about the sort of spells we're going to be having in this game. Now, one of my biggest critiques about Fable 2, and there's not many to have about this game, is I think the spells are kind of boring. I don't see much of a use case to them when you have to charge them up to get the cool effects, when you can just pull out your gun and do 10 times more damage per second. In Fable 1, it was different. You had these really cool spells, and I felt like the options you had there also were so much more plentiful. So with Fable 4 2025, I'm expecting a long list of abilities and spells we can use in that game, and I'll be disappointed if we don't have that. I think there's no excuse in this day and age to not have more options than any other Fable game before, and spells is a big one, because spells is pretty much a third of the combat. So if you don't have options for a third of the combat, you're limiting the playstyles by 33%. And I'm not joking, because this is the reason I think Fable 2, you play as a gunslinger. 99% of the time, you are playing as a gunslinger, because whilst melee is good in this game, it's not as good as pistols. And Will is just a joke in this game. There's actually no point to use Will. But at the end of the day, I want the spells to be fun. I want the spells to be a main form of combat. Another thing I really want is the emote wheel to come back. In Fable 2, you had all these different emotes that you could mess with at any time. Fable 1 had something similar, but it was nowhere near as intuitive, and honestly, it was really clunky and janky, and I ended up not using it too much because of that. And Fable 3 gutted the entire thing, and that was even worse. So I want something like this to return, where I literally just have a menu of all the different options I can choose at all times to do my character. And if there are no emotes, then I'm going to be very sad. Because I think it was a big part of what made Fable kind of funny back in the day. Like, I can't think of any other game where I can go, you know what, it's the middle of night, I've just finished killing beetles, I've got low health, I'm scared right now, I'm going to click right bumper, go to rude, and be a chicken. And then, just because I'm bored, I'm going to fail that, and fall on my ass. Because Fable. And it's goofy, it's silly, but again, it's very much its identity, and that's the charm. There's a lot of charm added because of this emote wheel, and I think that needs to return as a must-have. Another thing that, again, I've kind of spoken about a bit more in previous videos, and I will actually be making a dedicated video on this at some point, because I think it is important to a certain degree, more than the others. The family and landlord system needs to return. In Fable 2, nothing made me happier than having my own family, renting out all these properties and making passive income. I felt like I was being so strategic and tactical. And the bottom line is, that's good. That's how you should feel when playing a game. That's what you want. You should never feel like the game is just becoming a bit of a boring hack and slash. And of course, you always want options to do after the game is complete. And the landlord and renting system gave players a big sense of progression, because you got tens, if not hundreds of hours of gameplay where you have to go around cooping up money, trying to buy properties, to buy more properties, to get some of the biggest properties in the game. If you pick the good ending in Fable 2, you can't get Castle Fairfax for free. So, you basically have to go around buying houses and waiting for the rent system to kind of help you out there. And I felt that gave people a real sense of achievement, I suppose, and a big sense of progression. And it's something that I really want to come back, because that was a big element of Fable 2 for me. Another thing is, I'm a little worried it just won't feel like Fable. I want it to have the same sort of camera control. I want it to have the same sort of combat control. I want the art style to be on point. I want the music to be on point. And this is really just a big recollection over here of all my other points. But it is important. When I boot up this game, the biggest fear I actually have for it is it not feeling like Fable and feeling like some sort of Witcher game. And that is what I really worry about, because I do see elements of games like The Witcher in Fable's trailers, and you know, I didn't even like The Witcher that much, but it's not even the fact that it's The Witcher in specific. It's just like any game that isn't Fable that it feels like is a red flag, because this is Fable. It's that simple. I really want some good Easter eggs. Lionhead was so good at adding some really cool Easter eggs, whether it was behind a demon door or a hidden cave you didn't explore. They had a great knack for just hiding little features tucked away, especially in Fable 2. So that's something I just really hope to return, especially with the new limitations of consoles. I reckon they could actually add some really, really well thought out Easter eggs. This one's kind of simple, but I'll explain it anyway. I want a good story. I know that's really stupid of a point to bring up in a video like this, but just being real, if the story sucks, it's hard for me to get invested. And it's as easy to explain as that. Fable 2 story was amazing, Fable 3 story was amazing, Fable 1 story was amazing, and those are the only reasons that for some of those games, I kept playing as long as I did. Fable 3, for example, I think has fairly weak gameplay, but the story carries it, and it carries it hard, and it's the reason why I still consider Fable 3 a bit of a classic. I will happily go and replay Fable 3 for its story. Will I sink that much time into its other elements? Maybe not. That's the importance of having a good story. And it's not everything, but it is certainly important. I'd like to see them experiment with time jumps too. If you played Fable 2 at all, you know that in the start of the game you're a kid, and then you time jump 10 years, then you go to the spire and you time jump another 10 years. And this was really cool because I think it added so many different elements to the map, and you saw actual map progression. The Fable 2 map before the spire and after the spire is drastically different, and I love that sort of stuff. I think that really does add a sense of like the world is living and breathing, because even when you're not there, it's constantly progressing, and that stuff's always just been really cool to me. I'm also hoping for some really unique weather. One thing that was kind of hinted with Fable 2 back in the day, but we never really got, was the passing of seasons. I mean, I know that when we came back from the Spire, it was supposed to be like fall or something, and I don't think they enabled it or something in the full release, and we never kind of got access to the full version of places like Bellstone Cemetery. But I really hope that they can have different weather and different seasons as the game goes on, because I just think it's really unique. And I also think it keeps the map feeling as fresh as possible. The art direction looks amazing, so I have no doubt for that, but still, it'd be cool to get it. I also want house customization to come back. I'm losing my voice here, damn. I also want house customization to come back. It's something I think is, again, really important. Making my house my own is something I've always loved about Fable. And, you know, when you have a family and stuff and you have a house that actually feels like yours, it's just really cool. Let's kill these guys before they can escape. Lol. So yeah, I want interior customization to be good. And finally, this video's going on so long. I want fun jobs. I don't want to be sat there hitting a little green bar as it bounces left and right, okay? It's cool and everything, but I think we've evolved a bit past that. Give me some really unique and fun jobs where I don't feel like I'm just wasting time. And I don't really know how they would do it, but I like incorporating minigames into the jobs. I think that that's really cool. But, like, you know, don't just rip everything from Fable 2, and don't keep it always super simple. I like the more complex nature of these elements, and I think the harder you make it to earn money, you can reward players with more money. And again, it'd be nice to let people have easier jobs for easier money, and then harder jobs for harder money. Like, I always felt that being a blacksmith in Fable 2 was way harder than being a bartender. And I think that that's a good way of doing it, really. Make some jobs earn you more money, because I think the blacksmith does earn you more money. And then other jobs be easier for simpler money. And I think that's really cool. Anyways, though, finally, that's the end of the video. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe. What do you have on your Fable wishlist? I'm sorry that this was such a long video. And I'll be honest, as I'm saying half of these things, there's a million other things that come to mind about things I want in Fable. But I think I will definitely be ending it here, because I am actually losing my voice talking here. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.